How's everybody doing today? Um, for those of you that don't know, I am Catfish. And before I get into what we're going to be talking about today, for those of you that don't know, I guess I need to give somewhat of an introduction as to who I am. So, with that being said, uh, again, my name is Catfish. Uh, I am originally from the Mississippi Delta, and I currently reside in the metro Atlanta area, right? And um, as we start to get deeper into some of these episodes, you're going to realize that there's so much more to me than just what we're talking about today. Uh, Generally speaking, uh, what I'm going to be doing here in the fishbowl is talk about random stuff. I'm going to have guests that's going to come on to the show. I already have a few guests lined up, but I wanted to take the opportunity today, since something is weighing heavily on me, uh, to go ahead and address it. Uh, and maybe it's something that will be able to help someone else out. Um, but before we get into all that, I want to make sure that you understand who I am and where you can find me. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on TikTok, Twitter, and on YouTube. That is Catfish, KATTPHISH, right? So, with all of that being said, um, let's just get right into it, right? So, what we are going to be talking about today is grief, uh, and how I have been dealing with mine. So let's back up. This is 2023. In September of 2020, September the 3rd, as a matter of fact. September the 3rd of 2023, I took a surprise trip back to uh, Mississippi. And I brought my family with me, and we were excited about this trip because this trip was one that I was going home to show my parents um, the developments that were going on in my life. One of the major developments in 2020 was going home and being able to show my parents that I was getting ready to close on a new construction home, and to be able to go home and show them the ground before they broke the ground, and to show them, all of the things that were getting ready to happen in terms of us being able to move into where I am now. That was September 3rd, 2020. Uh, and while there, my father and I, we talked a whole lot, not just about that, but we talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about football. We talked about just a bunch of stuff. He's a big uh, Chicago Bears fan. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Uh, and while I'm talking to him, uh, sometimes your parents and your uh, older people in your family, they would do stuff or say stuff that don't necessarily make sense to you in that moment. But I'm sitting there with my father, and for those of you that know my father, you know that there's he he is a complex person, right? Because to my daughter, he is like the biggest saint in the world. You know what I mean? To me, he's daddy. To his partners, he's a crazy motherfucker. You know what I mean? Uh, and so when I'm with my daughter, when I'm with my father, I have to talk a certain way. But when it's just he and I, uh, we can be a little bit more relaxed with our conversation. And so it's just he and I at this point, and uh, we're talking about football. Uh, Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. My dad had just he didn't like Mitch at all. I can't stand that some bitch. Da 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 da. I can't stand him. Oh, by the way, over there in that closet, I have a, a, a safe over there. Yeah, man. Mitch Trubisky is just he sucks. He sucks. He sucks. Oh, and in that safe, there's a couple of things in there. So my daddy kept going between the his his hate for the quarterback at the time for the Chicago Bears and the contents of this safe. Lo and behold, the contents of that safe were all of his life insurance policy, the people that he wanted at his funeral, and all of his last wishes were in the confines of this very small safe. Right? I spent a couple of hours with my daddy, and I usually don't do that. I usually go home and spend maybe 30 minutes. I spent about 3 hours this day. We also talked about a lot of stuff that we had issues with that we were able to resolve. So the 3 hours was worth it. Got in my car, went and got him some food, brought it back, finished talking, and then, eventually made it back home. 1 week later, I get a phone call from the realtor. The realtor says, okay, it is now official. That land is yours. That we are going to break ground tomorrow. And all of the paperwork is done and everything is straight. Everything is squared away. It's officially yours. Excited. And I hang up the phone. And as soon as I hang up, I get a phone call from my mother. And she tells me that my father had a stroke and it wasn't looking good. That was Thursday. That next day, I was supposed to go and look at the model of the home. And so my sister called my sister. She went to Mississippi um, to, be with my father because I had to go through this last part of the process on Friday. And as soon as I finished that process, I went home. Uh, and 5 days later, my sister and I had to make the decision to pull the plug on my father. Prior to us making that decision, I had already come to the realization by talking to the doctors and looking at the charts and all of this stuff that there was no progression. And I remember the conversation that I had with my father on the 3rd of September that if things went a certain way with his health, these are all conversations that we had on the 3rd of September. If these are the things that are going to happen, don't keep me on no machine. Let me go. And I'm like, okay, Dad, let's get back to the football game. Right. But he was adamant about that. And in my mind, I knew by talking to these doctors and they're showing me all of these reports and showing me all of these charts and giving me their opinion. I knew that It was just a matter of time, right? So in my mind, I'm already there with knowing that he's going to pass away. But I can't be selfish because my sister has to come to terms with things on her own time. And so my job was to do exactly as my father said. One of the things that he said in that 3 hour conversation, anything ever happened to me, man, take care of my baby cakes. Take care of my baby cakes. That's what he called my sister. Right. And I remembered that. And so that's where my mind went. My mind went to making sure that she was comfortable, making sure that she was okay, making sure that everything that she wanted, as long as it fell in concert with his desires, that they were met, right? So I took it upon myself to leave Jackson, Mississippi, where my father was in the hospital, and to travel back to my hometown. I traveled back to my hometown, and one of my close friends, Yumika Jones, one of my close friends, she went with me to the funeral home. We are picking out caskets and going over the arrangements before my father passed away. And I'm doing all of this so that my sister won't have to, because I know that it's going to be emotional for her to have to go through all of those things. And I'm making sure that I am the person that is contacting his siblings. I'm making sure that I am the person that contacting his friends. And I'm the person that's, just keeping myself busy as possible to ensure that my sister doesn't have to do anything. And by my own sister's uh, admission, she I made it as easy for her as possible, but I think that I hurt myself in the process because I'm so busy focusing on everybody else. I'm focusing on his siblings. And mind you, that a couple of months prior, one of his brothers passed away. And we're talking in the height of COVID-19. So when his brother passed away, they couldn't even have a funeral. His funeral wasn't for a couple of almost a month or so later, right? A month prior to that, on my mother's side, my mother buried her aunt. So we're looking at an aunt. For me, it's a great aunt. Looking at my uncle, and now we're looking at my father. So it's processing all of this stuff, right? And in the midst of all that, you realize that what I realized what I was doing was more of a grief defense mechanism, right? Uh, and for those of you that don't know me, sometimes this is probably the this is probably the quietest and the most sophisticated that you would hear me speak. I'm usually more animated. I'm usually more colorful with my language. Um, but in the midst of all of this, I had to make sure that my sister was taken care of. My sister's someone who does not do social media at all. I went to social media when she wanted me to talk about the loss of our father. And I made a post and I told the people that uh, when they get to the funeral home, or we get to, well, not the gravesite, because we're talking about COVID, in the middle of COVID. When we're in the middle of COVID, we could not have a traditional funeral, in the sense of having a wake on one day, then a funeral the next day at a church, and then the burial at the gravesite. We had to do everything in one day. We had to do the wake at the funeral home, and we had to have a graveside funeral because we couldn't be inside of a church. We had to do social distancing and all of that. But prior to that, um, I know how my sister is. My sister is not on social media, but she did not want people to take pictures of my father laying in his final resting place in his casket. So I went to social media and I said it the only way that I could say it. I told people in a post that if by chance I find out or I see you taking a picture of my father while he's laying there, when we get to the gravesite, they can put dirt on top of you, on top of him. You can get down there in that hole with him. I'm being very polite with the words today, but back then I wasn't polite, right? In the midst of all of this, again, I am making sure that I'm taking care of my sister. I'm taking care of my aunt. I'm checking on other aunts, checking on, calling the only uncle on that side of the family that I have left. Calling and checking on him. And, you know, people are calling me and texting me initially because they needed comfort for the loss of my daddy, which was odd to me. But I played that role. Uh, but I didn't necessarily have any one of my family members, with the exception of two people that I can think of off the top of my head. My aunt Anne, well, three people. My aunt Anne, and I'm talking strictly on my father's side of the family. My aunt Anne, her son Tony, and my cousin Sharon. Those three people off the top of my head are people that called to genuinely check on me and not necessarily calling me, telling me, oh, I'm going to miss my uncle. Oh, I'm going to miss my cousin. Oh, I'm going to miss my brother, as opposed to checking to see how I am doing with the loss of my father. And it forced me to kind of suppress everything that I knew I had to deal with, um, and have yet to deal with. Honestly speaking, we're talking 3 years later, and I have yet to grieve in any way that society says that one should, right? There were some other things that transpired at the funeral that are quite hilarious, but that's for another day, right? In the process of accepting the fact that 2020 was a rough year with the loss of my great aunt, the loss of my uncle, the loss of my father, while we are there getting ready for the burial of my father, his older sister, truthfully, you're not supposed to have favorites, but she's one of my favorite aunts on my father's side. She was there and she pulled me and my cousin Tony to the side. She's been begging us to come to Indianapolis to visit her for a long time, and we were outside of my aunt Bobby's house. She was like, I need y'all to come lay eyes on me up there. Like, yeah, we coming, we coming. As soon as we kind of, get all this out the way, we gonna be on the way up there. Less than a month after we buried my father, she's gone. Her daughter Sharon was one of the people that I vividly remember checking on me to see how I personally was doing with the loss of my father. She wasn't calling me to check on the loss to talk about how much she's going to miss her uncle. She wasn't doing that. But now the roles are reversed. I lost a parent less than a month ago, and now she's lost her parent. So we have a relatable situation, which brings me to another point. Um, for a very long time, I mean, very long time. Well, let's back up even prior to all of the deaths. Uh, I know that from time to time I can be somewhat of an asshole as it pertains to certain things. One of the things that I have always secretly, not most of the times I'm outwardly an asshole, right? But there are instances where you have to secretly be an asshole, right? And one of those instances that I was secretly an asshole about was when people were dealing with death and dealing with grief. Uh, I would say to myself when they post stuff like, damn, that motherfucker been gone for about 4 years. You ain't over that yet? They been gone for 10 years. You ain't over there yet? They been gone for 6 months. You ain't over there yet? Those are things I would say to myself. I never, I'm an asshole, but I do have some sense of humanity. I can say those things to myself. I would never say those things, publicly. But now, looking at having to deal with uh death of my own in my own family, with people that are close to me, with people that I care about, with people that I love, I completely get it. The people that I had those thoughts about, they don't know that I had those thoughts because I never vocalized it. But for anyone who has ever had those thoughts, you won't get it until you in it, right? But now let's fast forward. We have moments where people are grieving, and everyone wants to send out. I'm going to go ahead and call it what I call it. It's protocol for a lot of people to to say certain stuff, right? Uh, I'm sorry for your loss. My condolences, you know, and those things don't necessarily make you feel better, right? They don't. It's like you know that it's the right thing to say, but to the person that's dealing with it, those things are meaningless because it doesn't erase whatever it is that you're feeling, nor does it fill the void of the person that is no longer here on earth. And with some people, you realize that the death, death has a funny way of exposing a lot of things, right? When you experience the death of someone that is close to you, the people that you think are your closest people can sometimes show you that they're not. Is moments when you truly, truly, truly need these people. I don't need you for money. I don't need you for, uh, I just need you for support. I need that. And the people, the handful of people that I thought I could rely on, dropped the ball, right? But that was an eye opener for me, right? What was also an eye opener is people that you didn't even think were in your circle showed you that they're not only in your circle, but they're in your corner. There's a difference between being in the corner, being in the circle, right? Some people showed me that they're definitely people that are in my corner. One person, I'm going to call two people out. One person I know is in my corner with, without any hesitation. Me and this guy's been friends since the 8th grade. I can't do that math, but that's over 30 years, right? Uh, we met uh, in the 8th grade and we've been friends ever since. You know what I'm saying? His name is George. I know that whenever I need George for anything, George gonna come through, right? Now, that is something that I expected. What I did not expect was uh, the support that I received from one of my frat brothers, right? Now, here's the thing. Some of your frat brothers are these some of your frat brothers are going to be your lifelong friends. Other frat brothers are going to be people that you see. You will see them during homecoming, and you would see them, during reunions and things of that nature. And but I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to deal with you. Um, and it's not that you're not cordial, but you just don't have a working relationship with this person. This one guy though, he came and showed up in a way that I was not expecting, and I thank him every time I talk to him. You know what I mean? Uh, Martin, I forgot to say his name. We call him Shaggy, right? But um, so that's that, and then fast forward less than a month later, I had to take the pilgrimage to Indianapolis to bury my aunt. I'm still I'm just at the point of being able to redirect my energy so that I can focus on the loss of my father, myself. And then she passed away, and now my energy is diverted and it is switched to go focus on the loss of one of my favorite aunts who I just spoke to less than a month ago. And it kind of started that whole cycle all over, right? When you're going through a death recently, your phone goes like just crazy. It's constant text messages, constant phone calls, constant messages on social media, Facebook and everything else. Notifications going through the roof and things like that. Again, people are spitting stuff that you at the time that you're dealing with it, uh it seems like just protocol. It seems like what you're supposed to do, right? Um, and so it to me, I can't say for everybody else. To me, sometimes those words, depending on who they're coming from, are meaningless, right? But I digress. We go to Indianapolis, we deal with that. That was in October of 2020. So that starts that whole process for me all the way over. A few months later, I can't remember if it was late December or early January. I'm at home. I get a phone call from my sister. Uh, One of my cousins, who is a year younger than me, died. Right? I'm still not at a point of being able to properly grieve the loss of my father because I'm focused on my cousin and her children, making sure that they're straight, um, and all of those things. And then my cousin passed away. Right? Now, the ironic thing about all of those is that um you don't want to say that you love one person more than another, but fuck it. It is what it is. No one will be able to replace anyone that we lost, but no one will ever replace the love that a son has for his father. No love is going to trump that in terms of what I had lost over that 4 6 month period, right? But we back up. My great aunt, she was an elderly woman. My uncle was an elderly man. My father, while not elderly, was older, and it is a part of life that the expectation is that children are to bury their fathers. So it is what it is. My aunt was an elderly woman, but when my cousin passed away, it hit different. She's a year younger than me. She lives right here in Metro Atlanta. And to be able to get that news that she passed away, um, that hit different because this is somebody that didn't have a hand in raising me. This is someone who I came out the mud with together. You know what I mean? That's different, right? All those other people, they had a hand in raising me. They whooped my ass and, all this other stuff. But Devin, we were doing dirt together. You know what I mean? We came up at a time where, like, all of us, like, cousins are your first friends. You know what I mean? And so she was one of my first friends. And to lose her, that again kind of started the whole process over. So much so that uh, I wanted to go to her funeral. I could not make myself go um, because I didn't want that to be real. You know, I didn't want that to be real. But as I look at all of this stuff, uh, I realized that I had waited so long to deal with the grief of my own father that I suppressed it so much that I don't even know how to bring that to the forefront so that I can properly deal with it. I don't know how. What I do know is that I can look at two people and realized that these two people had my back through the whole thing. And it's no surprise, but my wife and my daughter, right? My wife and my daughter, they were strong. They were able to grieve. I was able to support them while they grieved because I looked at it and I said, okay, um, this is different for my daughter because she, this is her first grandparent that she lost. So I got to be there for my baby girl, right? And I could see that my wife saw that I was struggling with how to grieve. And unbeknownst to me, I did not know it at the time, but I would go to work, come home, do regular stuff around the house, play video games, do whatever. And then I would go upstairs, lay down, and go to sleep. And my wife told me that I told her after a while that uh, I'm struggling with how to grieve. And she told me that you grieve every day when you go to sleep. I'm like, how? Because you cry in your sleep. You wake up and your pillow is wet because you cry in your sleep. And honestly speaking, I thought that I thought that I had developed a new trait of just slobbing in my sleep because I would wake up and the pillow would be wet. But God damn, what the fuck going on? That's what I was thinking, right? But again, unbeknownst to me, that is how I was dealing with it. And I still think that that's kind of like a cheat code because I don't want to say that I'm looking for that moment. I want to experience that moment, but I know that it is healthy. Uh, it is healthy to do that, right? If you look at things from the perspective of sex, right? When people have sex, they're looking for that release because that release feels good. You know what I mean? When you in that thing and you doing your thing and that thing be thinking, you be ready for that thing to thing after you get through thinking for a while. You feel me? And I look at grief the same way. You know what I mean? Grief and an orgasm are both nothing more than a release. And if that release, if I don't have it, I feel like I'm cheating myself. And I'm cheating myself because emotionally, I don't know how to go through it when I am uh, cognitive of the fact that I'm going through it. Subconsciously, or I am when I am sleeping, or well, only when I'm sleeping. You know what I mean? But when I'm awake, I don't deal with it, and I try. I try. I have a journal. I write. Da 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 da. Nothing is getting me where I need to get emotionally so that I can move forward. So we fast forward a couple of years. I'm still struggling with it to this day. We fast forward a couple of years, and with my father, the last time I saw him was September the 3rd. The last time I saw him alive, September 3rd. October the 3rd of this year. No, let's back up one day. October the 2nd of this year. I went online and I purchased this equipment. I purchased this microphone, this headset. I got this board here in front of me. purchase a bunch of equipment so that I could do things like this. I bought it on Amazon, and Amazon promises 2 day shipping, but for some reason, when I ordered it, it came the very next day, October the 3rd. And it got here, but I was tired because I work overnight. When it got here, I brought the box in the house, laid down, went back to sleep. Woke up, spent time with my wife and my daughter, watching TV. She gets a phone call. She rushes out the door. She calls me a few hours later to tell me that her mother had passed away. Now I am in her shoes from 3 years ago. And I realized something. I realized that I didn't want to be the person that offered condolences. I didn't want to be the person to say, I'm sorry for your loss. I didn't want to be the person that did what was protocol. All I could do was think to myself that in terms of losing a parent, yes, I can relate to that because I am still struggling with how to deal with the fact that my father is no longer here. But mamas hit different. Mamas are different because mamas are just a black mother is the most special person on the face of the earth to their children. A black mother will be able to protect you, they will fight for you, they will love you unconditionally, they will mentor you, and they will comfort you. And the only thing that I could think of at the time was my wife, her two sisters, and her brother. They all lost one person that could comfort them the most in this moment. No one can comfort their children like a mother. And losing that mama and not being able to have that person to be able to comfort them because they're gone is heartbreaking. And so now, I look at that and, we recently just came back from the funeral, and this again shows the strength of black mamas. Um, as my mother-in-law is about to be uh, put in her final resting place, I'm looking at my wife. I'm looking at all of my in-laws, my two sister-in-laws, looking at my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, he- we're not talking about him right now. Let's look at my wife and my two sister-in-laws, right? I know what they're going through in the sense of losing a parent, but what I realized in that moment was when they are grieving and they are crying and they are yelling and they're doing all of the things that I never got a chance to do. When they hear their children crying, they hear their children screaming because they lost their grandmother. I'm sitting there holding my daughter in one arm, and I got my arm around uh on the back of my wife, and my daughter screams. She yells out. She does this big release that she's having. My wife was able to instantly turn that off, wipe her tears, compose herself, and go and comfort her child. I watched both of my sister-in-laws do the same thing. I watched them compose themselves so that they can go and turn their grief off so that they can be the comfort that their children need. It was that at that moment that I realized that the comfort that they are providing to their children, they don't have that comfort right now. They don't have that woman that can come to them, put her arms around them and tell them it's gonna be okay. You know, excuse me. They don't have that. And so it's just weird to be able to understand the grief that others are dealing with, especially, you know, the grief that your child or your spouse is dealing with. But you can't process and deal with I can't process and deal with it myself. You know what I mean? It is very, very difficult, and it is something that I am learning how to deal with, learning how to process. Talk with a partner of mine when I was in the military with. When I was in the military with him, his father had died sometime shortly before he got in the military. And at this point, he had been in the military for like 10 years. It was like, I ain't never cried or nothing like that, you know. And I've been out the military for a while. He hit me up the other day and told me that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it just hit him. And he sat up and he boohooed and he cried. And, you know, all of that just came out of him. And we're talking almost 2 decades after the fact, right? And that I don't want that to be my story, but if it is, it's going to happen how it happens. It's going to happen how it happens, and I'm going to deal with it when it comes. But um, I hope that those of you that are going to watch this are going to see that it's definitely a struggle that a lot of people deal with, because I've talked to other people, and primarily what I've realized is that this is something that a lot of men deal with but don't talk about, you know, and hopefully, at some point, uh, we as men will be able to uh, find ways to be able to talk about those things, to be able to express ourselves, find those people that we can put in our circle and eventually in our corner and talk about it. Um, in the meantime, uh, for those of you that want to talk about it, for those of you that want to express yourselves, just have an opinion about it, you can leave a comment down below, and you know I will definitely look at your experiences. I will definitely look at your comments and take everything that you're saying under advisement, you know. But um, it's definitely something that I struggle with, and I don't know how long I'm going to struggle with this release, but uh, It's a struggle. And there's a bunch of other things that I deal with unrelated to grief. But hopefully, this opportunity of me being transparent with you is something that I'm going to continue to do. I'm going to continue to exercise transparency with a lot of you so that we can create dialogue, so that we can have meaningful conversation. We can have fun conversation. Uh, we can be with the shits too. You know what I mean? But I wanted to take this opportunity because this was, sitting on my mind as I was at work last night. Um, and I wanted to get this out. And I realized that I am someone who writes a lot, someone who talks a lot. And I wanted to utilize a different platform to be able to express exactly what I'm feeling. And so I decided I just bought all of this damn equipment. I may as well go ahead and, use this platform. So I'm going to go ahead and, holler at y'all about it. But I will conclude this episode right now. I want to thank those of you that have watched thus far for watching. Um, I want to remind you that you are watching Catfish in the Fishbowl. You can follow me on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube by going and searching for Catfish. KATTPHISH. Again, I appreciate you for taking the time to listen, and I will sign off now and talk to you later.